Indianapolis wrecking ball theft. In the 1970s, newspapers in the Indianapolis region reported the most bizarre theft. Someone had apparently stolen an entire wrecking ball without getting caught. This became a big mystery at the time, and it's still a mystery today, nearly 50 years later. So, what happened? How could something as massive and heavy as a wrecking ball vanish overnight? Before we get to that, it's important to mention that the facts surrounding this mysterious theft are very inconsistent. Some sources claim that the ball was 5 tons and 200 feet in the air. Other sources say that the ball was only half that weight at 2.5 tons. There's also a mystery surrounding the date of when this event happened. A newspaper report I found on the incident was from July of 1973. However, a Redditor found the mention of this mystery in a book which listed the date as 1974 instead. This book also listed the weight as 2.5 tons instead of the 5 tons mentioned in the newspaper, adding further confusion. This might not sound like a big deal, but a difference of 2.5 tons can make a wrecking ball much easier to steal with a truck and a well thought out plan. The bigger question, however, is why? As the 1973 newspaper states, I can't figure out what someone would do with a 5-ton metal ball. Well, there are a few prevalent theories online. One of these theories speculates that this was the work of a rival company, which is just cartoonishly evil enough to be true. But the thing is, melting the wrecking ball to sell the steel would have been too expensive, and it's highly unlikely that they had a crane lying around to use with the stolen wrecking ball. So, if this theory is true, the only plausible explanation is that they stole the ball to slow down their rival's work and cause financial trouble. This also checks out since, according to the 1973 newspaper article, the ball was stolen during a demolition job. That said, there's also another theory that is also a bit out there, but can make perfect sense if we had more information regarding the finances of the company the ball was stolen from. According to this theory, the company stole its own wrecking ball and hid it somewhere as a form of insurance fraud. Also, while researching this topic, I came across a similar incident that happened in Dallas, Texas in 1978. If the wrecking ball theft in Indianapolis was truly for insurance fraud, maybe a demolition business owner in Dallas saw its success and decided to do the same. Overall, because this happened so long ago and there's very inconsistent information on it, we'll likely never know what happened to this disappearing wrecking ball. Persistent trip. On August 14, 2012, a user named Amos No More uploaded a video titled Persistent Trip, Datura. The video, just over 2 minutes long, shows a young man in disarray alone in his room talking directly into the camera. He opens by giving the recording date, March 5, 2008, and immediately begins recounting a disturbing experience with a hallucinogenic drug. According to him, he's been stuck in an unending trip for over 2 months by the time this footage was recorded, and he claims his symptoms haven't shown any signs of improvement.
It's March 5th, 2008. Don't seem to be coming down. It's been about 2 months. I can't really go out. I've been spending a lot of time in the basement. I don't think it's wearing off. I don't really know.
He explains he followed instructions from a book precisely, yet has no idea how to escape this nightmare. But it's not just the contents of this video that are unsettling, it's how the video came to be uploaded that makes it all the more eerie. The video's description reads, "This video was uploaded to YouTube several years ago and I haven't been able to find it recently. As I recall, the uploader claimed it was found footage. He said he found a tape on a park bench or something and was concerned about the person depicted therein." And just a few months later, another user by the name of Dizzy Duck uploaded the same video in December of 2012 with the title Endless Trip Video. The description of this second upload more or less aligns with what was mentioned in the first description, with the added information that the original footage was supposedly found somewhere in Philadelphia. Dizzy Duck also points out something disturbing, what looks like a revolver or some kind of gun on a shelf behind the man's left shoulder. Unfortunately, the resolution of both of these uploads is too low for me to identify it as a gun with certainty. But if it is, this would give this already cryptic video a very dark undertone. What really gets me though is the mystery surrounding it. Despite supposedly being over 14 years old and having over 400,000 views on one of its re-uploads, there's almost no credible information out there. The only other reference I found is this Reddit thread on r/videos from 11 years ago. However, even the original poster of this thread has since deleted their account. So, what's the deal with this video? Is it real or just an elaborate hoax? First, let's assume that all the known details surrounding the video are real, from what the person in the video is saying to what's mentioned in the description. The person in the video is clearly very stressed out, and while he's not going crazy in the traditional sense, his body language, refusal to make eye contact with the camera, and overall demeanor shows that he clearly wasn't 100% there when recording.
I think I boiled the roots right. I did what it said in the book. I don't feel like I'm ever gonna come down. And it's not cool.
Amos, in his re-upload, suggests the substance causing this bad trip might be datura, a highly toxic plant that can act as a hallucinogen in small doses. However, this is likely not the case for two major reasons. For starters, datura is a deliriant with the disturbing nickname of Devil's Trumpets. This is because the trips caused by datura are extremely painful and often lead to bizarre and violent behavior. The person who recorded this video is far too composed to be under the influence of such a strong substance. Secondly, he also talks about boiling some roots to prepare whatever drug he took. Datura, on the other hand, is usually consumed through its leaves or seeds, not the roots. I think a more likely substance he could have used is ayahuasca, which is traditionally made by boiling roots and has effects mild enough that someone could record a video while under its influence. However, regardless of whichever drug he used, tripping for 2 straight months is simply not possible, and here's why. Almost all drugs wear off as soon as they're metabolized or leave the body. Then there's also the question that if he's been down in the basement for 2 months, how's he getting food or making money? Considering these signs, it's likely that he was tripping, but not for 2 months, just a few hours. Many people in the comments of the original video have pointed to the phenomenon where a trip feels like it lasted for way longer than it actually did. Though another likely explanation could be mental illness as well. There is a high likelihood that whichever substance he used caused brain damage and led to schizophrenia, making him unable to tell reality from hallucination. There's also the possibility of hallucinogen persisting perception disorder, which causes a person to experience visual effects that last long after the drug is worn off. However, those effects are usually more like static or blurriness, not full-blown trips. Even so, all of this depends on the assumption that available information surrounding this mystery is true. For all we know, this could be nothing more than a hoax, especially since the mention of this being found footage sounds rather fishy. This whole thing could have been created by the uploader Amos No More for Internet Cloud. Dizzy Duck's re-upload could be just another move by Amos to build on the found footage storyline. But it's been over 12 years since this upload, and he hasn't done any follow-ups to capitalize on the few 100,000 views it's received. Of course, there's also a middle ground theory. Maybe the original video was real and the guy in it genuinely thought he was tripping for 2 months. Amos might have stumbled across the initial post before it disappeared and then decided to create a hoax based on it. Unfortunately, given the sparse amount of information I found, it's impossible to nail down the truth. In the off chance everything was real, I hope the person in the video found the help he needed and is doing much better today. Jack Fro's emails. In November of 2011, Tim Hart was sitting on his couch surfing the web on his laptop when out of nowhere he received a mysterious email that left him in complete disbelief. The email read, "I'm watching. Did you hear me? I'm at your house. Clean your attic." Now, receiving an email like this would make most people think that they were either the target of a prank or had a stalker lurking nearby. But for Tim, both of these possibilities were completely out of the question because the email came from his friend Jack Froese, who had died about 5 months earlier. What made this particularly convincing was the bit about cleaning the attic. Just weeks before Jack's death, he visited Tim's attic and they joked about what a mess it was. And while Tim was still trying to figure things out, Jack's cousin, Jimmy McGraw, also received an email from Jack a few days later. However, this one was even more mysterious than the last one, reading, "Hey Jim, how you doing? I knew you were gonna break your ankle, tried to warn you. Gotta be careful. Tell Rock for me. Great song, huh? You're welcome." Couldn't get through to him, his email didn't work. Now, the simplest explanation for these emails is that Jack had scheduled them to be sent before he passed away. However, this theory has two major flaws. You see, Jack died of heart arrhythmia, a condition where electrical signals that tell the heart to beat don't work properly. This happens mostly out of nowhere, and there is no reliable way to predict this ahead of time. In other words, Jack had no way of knowing that he was going to die, which would have prompted him to schedule these emails. Secondly, while it can't explain the email Tim received since the two talked about his dirty attic before Jack's death, there's no way to rationalize the email Jimmy received. He sprained his ankle about 2 weeks before receiving the email, which was nearly 5 months after Jack's death. So, unless Jack had the superpower of future sight, he couldn't have possibly predicted such an unlikely event for his scheduled email. This leads us to the second theory, one that the recipients themselves preferred to believe, that this was Jack's reaching out to them one last time from beyond the grave.
I would like to say Jack sent it, just because I look at it as he's gone, but he's still trying to connect with me and still trying to tell me things to move along and feel better.
However, while it's comforting to imagine that those who have left this world can still watch over their loved ones, this is by far the least likely explanation for these emails. Especially compared to the possibility that someone close to both Tim and Jimmy had access to Jack's email account. This also explains the inclusion of recent events like Jimmy's ankle injury in the emails. Another thing I noticed while looking into this incident is that Jack's name is spelled incorrectly in the signature of both emails. It should be F-R-O-E-S-E, not F-O-R-S-E. If Jack was the one who wrote these emails, either before or after his death somehow, then why would he spell his own name incorrectly, twice? Ultimately, Tim and Jimmy had a real shot at finding the real sender if they really wanted to. But now, 13 years later, there's little hope we'll ever learn the truth. Poorly Planned Comics. Poorly Planned Comics was a series of webcomics by a person named Jack Masters. And while the original website has long been taken down from the internet, there are still archives capturing how it looked back then. As I went through these archives, the first thing that hit me was the surreal art style and the constant fourth wall breaking humor. Even in the very first comic on the website, the characters joke about the camera being zoomed in too close. And this was only the beginning. Over the course of their run, Jack published hundreds of comics featuring countless unique characters and mind-bending, maze-like storylines. The contents of these comics also range from bizarre to downright disturbing. Like this one comic titled, "The Entire Universe Falls Apart." In it, the characters slowly realize that their universe isn't real, causing everything around them to collapse. Panels break down, dialogue turns into nonsense, and nothing makes sense anymore. The comic ends with one of the characters stating, "Alright, I give up. It was all a dream, it was all a dream." However, sandwiched between all this mysterious and chaotic artwork, there's a moment of pause where Jack includes something extremely introspective and philosophical. It reads, "The sad and obvious truth of the matter is that art, once formalized or mechanized, is no longer art, and the few arts that have not been formalized are now being mechanized. There is no mystery or talent required to create artistic beauty. And if a talentless person can do it, why should we give any regard to those who require talent to produce the same result? John may spend a week painting a tree, but Jane will take a photograph and then use a workshop program to make the picture appear painted. There is no visual art creation before the last century that modern technology would not have allowed a less talented person to make better and faster. Let us be realistic and assume this trend will continue. There is nothing we can do to avoid the solemn fact that Michelangelos are no longer needed." These kinds of intellectual reflections were sprinkled throughout his comics. However, the creation of these comics was abruptly cut short when Jack posted a strip simply titled, "The End." This was a final note from Jack before he ended his life, starting with the statement, "If you are reading this, I am dead." The rest of the comic listed his will for his various possessions, both physical and digital. Below the comic, there was also a personal reminder Jack had left for himself listing things he needed to do. However, the most mysterious part of the comic was this: a link that explained why Jack did this. Clicking on this link led to an archive of thousands of emails between Jack and various people, including friends and what seemed like an online therapist. These emails are in no particular order and have absolutely zero organization. So, as you might imagine, going through them is a long and arduous task. Unlike other internet mysteries where there's barely any information, here there's almost too much, more than any one person could easily go through. I went through as much as I could, and one thing became extremely clear. Jack was struggling with severe mental illness. That much was already clear from his comics, but going through these emails gave me a good idea of the exact illness Jack was dealing with. For starters, Jack had extreme schizophrenia, which led him to having extremely violent and disturbing thoughts. In one of his emails, he stated, "I'm full of seething, boiling hatred pain, and the only reason I'm not going out killing people right now is that I'm lucid enough not to want to deal with the consequences of such behavior." In addition to this, Jack also had dissociative identity disorder, or DID for short. This is evident from his constant mentions of a person named Susie, which he referred to as his best friend and better companion than no one. But I'm certain Susie is not a real person, because in one email Jack mentions how he feels something slipping away and Susie taking control. In another email, he also linked to a clip of the character Ben Chang from the TV show Community, where Ben Chang talks to his alternate personality. Jack also used the name Simon Sane in these emails. Looking up this name online, I found a YouTube channel with a 4+ hour stream of him talking to himself in 2 different voices while tripping on LSD.
Don't do it. That's my advice to everyone. Don't be polite.
I think there may be an overgeneralization.
Well, whatever. Okay, so...
This theory of Jack's complex mental state was pretty much confirmed by the comment that first brought this mystery to light in the first place. In December 2016, someone on r/AskReddit asked about the creepiest things on the internet. In response to this, a user named Jess248 posted a link to the original Poorly Planned Comics website and also shared a personal anecdote about Jack, stating, "Might not be the creepiest, but I can't handle a lot of disturbing things. This one got to me. A childhood friend of my husband's. The guy was insanely brilliant, literally. Husband lost touch over the years. These were his comics. The very last one was his self-assassination note. They had the memorial at his condo. He had blocked out all the windows and wrote in Sharpie all over the walls. It was his breakdown, trying to find meaning before he took his life. One of the most heartbreaking things I've ever seen. And while everything that I've covered so far might seem like a lot, it's only the tip of the iceberg when it comes to the amount of comics, emails, and videos Jack left behind. Not to mention things that aren't explicitly stated in his work, like his obsession with the 1985 book called Maze. Maybe one day, people on the internet will finally comb through everything and complete Jack's story. Grateful Doe Hitchhiker. On June 26, 1995, at around 1:30 p.m., Virginia State Police responded to the report of a car crash near the small town of Emporia, Virginia. The Volkswagen Vanagon involved in the incident was completely wrecked from the front due to a collision with roadside trees. And since neither of the 2 passengers were wearing a seatbelt, both of them were partially ejected from the front windshield and were deceased by the time police arrived. One of the victims of this crash was quickly identified as 21-year-old Michael Hager, a student at the University of South Carolina. However, every effort to identify the second guy proved entirely fruitless. His face was heavily disfigured during the crash, and he didn't have an ID on him either. Police were also unable to find any matching fingerprints in their database. Michael's family also had no idea who the second person was. Curiously, both Michael and this unknown person were wearing the same tie-dye t-shirt with the logo of the Grateful Dead rock band. After searching the bodies, police found 2 disheveled tickets for the Grateful Dead concert that took place a day prior in DC. They also found a handwritten note which stated, "Jason, sorry we had to go. See you around. Call me. Caroline T and Caroline O. Bye." Further investigation led to the conclusion that this unknown writer was simply hitchhiking. The 2 likely met at the concert and became friends. As for the crash, the police determined that it was simply caused by the driver falling asleep at the wheel. But that wasn't all. The only 2 things police knew about the unidentifiable man were that he was a fan of the Grateful Dead and that his name was likely Jason, as was written on the note. Jason was declared as John Doe, which is a name given to a person whose real name is unknown. And due to the Grateful Dead shirt he was wearing, Jason became known as the Grateful Doe. However, they were unable to find any more information on him, and the case was closed after some time. That is until 2012, when the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children published a digital recreation of Jason's face. This attracted the attention of internet detectives who became interested in identifying this person some 17 years after the original incident. A notable person who got involved in the case was the Reddit user Zombie Gray. Zombie began scouring the internet for any useful information they could find, and also founded a subreddit solely dedicated to finding the real identity of Jason. Zombie also created this missing person poster of sorts for Jason, which included all of the available information as well as a link to contact Zombie. The poster had a catchy title which read, "Can you help give him back his name?" Surprisingly, this poster went super viral across all social media sites and finally led to a breakthrough. A while after the poster was published, a man named Steve contacted Zombie and claimed that he knew who Jason was. According to Steve, his full name was Jason Callahan. Now the only thing left to find was any living family members of Jason. Fortunately, that didn't take long. In January of 2015, the following was posted after seeing the missing person poster on Facebook. OMG, this is my son Jason Callahan from Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. I've been looking for him all this time with no luck. Today, my other son saw this Facebook page, and after all the years of praying for him to just call me or come home. Apparently, Jason had left his home when he turned 18 and was traveling around the country on his own. All this time, his mother thought that Jason was dodging her calls and simply didn't want to return home. With that, after 2 decades, one of the most mysterious John Doe cases was solved. Though it is sad to think about his mother who thought that her son was alive, only to learn about his death through the internet 20 years later.